So for that, I'd like to introduce Bryant Haley, who is the coordinator for emergency management at Portland State. As a coordinator, his role is to work to fine-tune best practices and policies and plans and procedures into processes that can be handled by everyone at Portland State University. This includes working enterprise-wide to pursue grants, training Portland State community, and striving to establish clear, understandable ways on how agencies work before, during, and after an incident. By the way, it's not only earthquakes that he deals with. He deals with all types of different emergencies. He has his Bachelor of Arts degree in adolescent education and his master's degree in public administration with a focus in conflict resolution. So we have a lot of conflicts for sure, and we hope that he can resolve them for us. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryant Haley.
Good evening, everyone. Usually I'm a high school teacher, so I'm used to being in the audience and telling people to stop, pushing each other or throwing something, so it's a little different for me. But tonight I'll start with, what do I have up here? Spare tire. Now, why would I put that there? Well, it's an allegory a lot of emergency managers like to use. How many of you have spare tires? Probably most of you drive a car or ride a bike. When's the last time you checked the spare tire in your car? When's the last time you put air in it, showed your spouse how to put it on, showed your neighbor, your son, your daughter? This is the questions that emergency management asks. So what am I here to talk to you about tonight? I'm going to talk to you about emergency management. I started the program in September of 2007 as a half-time position that moved up in March of 2008. And I've worked on everything from earthquakes to active shooters to a whole bunch of other issues that I get to work with a bunch of my colleagues that I'm glad to see in the audience here tonight. I'll talk about regional preparedness. I'll cover some of the systems that we have in place, and then I'll talk about personal preparedness. So what is emergency management? The idea that we have, that I use as my slogan here, is preparing for tomorrow's possibilities today. We know that an earthquake is going to happen. Now, what are we going to do about it? We have to engage it. We have to figure out how our own personal lives are going to do it. So how do I do that enterprise-wide? Well, enterprises tend to make a lot of plans, make those lovely papers that we put in binders. So part of the job of emergency management is to say, well, what equipment do we need? What do we need to train? What do we need to put in place? So that's the second piece here. Then we exercise it. The most common one that you can probably think of for this is a fire drill. We do these in our dorms, we do these at work, we do these in our schools. Now that piece can be replaced by an incident. When we have an incident, we have to learn from it. And that's the biggest portion that's highlighted up there of my job, is to evaluate and improve. We go through incidents all the time in this urban campus where people are passing through in cars, bikes, by foot. And we have a lot of things that we need to figure out. How can we do better next time? And then we go back to the plan, and we take it back to formula, and we recreate. So emergency management core functions is mitigation. How do we prevent things from happening in the beginning? Reduce. Something we do with this is I work on seismic grants with our facilities department and across campus. Preparedness, develop streamlined responses. How do we work with Portland Fire? How do we work with Portland PV? Response, aligning those resources, training together, working together ahead of time. And recovery. We're going to have an incident. How do we continue on? What are we going to need to rebuild our systems, to rebuild our buildings? So the core concept that I like to go over, is this is something that we instituted here as I came on, is incident command. This came out of the wildfire response in California. The idea was we're losing all these people behind fire lines, we're losing equipment because we're just throwing resources at the problem, throwing people at the problem, not organizing. So they came up with an incident command. And it just breaks out the different areas of an incident. And I'll go over this real quickly. An incident commander is usually one of your most seasoned people on the field. The way I like to describe an incident commander is how many have taken Red Cross training, CPR. They tell you, what's the first thing you learn? I'm going to stay with the victim, you go call 911, you go wait outside. That's being an incident commander. You're taking control of the scene. You're taking control of an incident. So to break that out a little more, there's some other aspects that we've learned we need. Safety. Yes, it's good to go in and try to save babies in a burning building, but do we lose more responders by doing that? Is it safe? We need people to step back and look up the 5,000-foot view of the incident and say, that's not a good idea. We're going to make this incident worse if we're not safe. Information. This happens to us all the time at this university. And the Oregonian, thank them, 3 days they tracked us on the front of the paper because 2 of our basketball players went down to Mexico, got in a fight, and they decided to say it was a sanctioned trip. Well, it wasn't. But we had to manage the incident. We had to manage our image as a university to say, hey, this was not sanctioned by us. These are just 2 guys that went down and they got in some trouble. So you can see how that can explode up for an organization. Liaison. This is someone who works with the government or other agencies to share information and resources. Operations is your fire, police. People are doing the tactical ground movements. Planning out how are we responding to this. Are we going by objectives? Are we just throwing resources at this? Logistics. I got to play this once in an incident. They delivered the honey buckets a mile down the road. Well, how does that help the responders if they're wasting time walking down the road? It's really funny to argue with a company like that. Finance and administration. This one's big. This is tracking hours. This is tracking purchasing. Who owns the bulldozer afterwards? This is split between a city and a county. Who gets to keep it in the end? So that's the generalized concept that I helped institute here that we use for almost all incidents. As this goes up to a larger scale, it's called NIMS, National Incident Management System. This is how we play at a larger level when incidents require more response, more equipment. So coming into this, I wanted to go over what it actually means to the university. I familiarized the university community. We went through departments, worked on plans, worked on processes. How do we do this better for your department? How do you link up with the university overall? And that also goes out into working with the external community. Incident command we use all the time for like that basketball incident all the way down to the bomb threats we get when someone doesn't want to take their chemistry exam. It became quite common for a while here. And you can imagine how that expands out on a tight urban campus like this. So with that, we do a thing called a tabletop. What that is, it's just a mock scenario. We go over something that we had before. The last one we did here was a winter storm during our winter quarter. We went over that. And then 2 weeks later, we had a winter storm. So it was good. We learned where we were short. We learned where we needed to fix a couple things. And we include local responders in that. William, in the green there, has played in one of ours before. He played a fire chief and went back against one of my VPs, pretty tough, and we learned a lot from that. Developing and improving communication systems. One of my first projects here at PSU was to develop PSU Alert. For those of you who aren't in the PSU community, it's a system you can register to get email, text, or a phone call. And that's just our way of trying to get immediate information out as fast as possible. Partnerships. So important in this business. How do we work better with Portland? How do we work better with Portland Fire? Portland Fire is on our campus, and police and emergency management are all right at the periphery of our campus. How do we work better with our partners for information sharing, for grant opportunities? And these are some of the committees I actively work with. And you can see the death by acronyms can come up there, and I thought I would show some of those. If you have questions about those, I can go over them later if you don't know them. Getting into more anecdotal, I'm not sure how many of you know this story, but it's called Weave Long Ropes, and it's a native oral tradition from Oregon. You can find it online if you Google it. It's a really good story. I believe it's only like 7 pages long. But the basic idea of it was this son goes up to a mountaintop with his grandfather, and the grandfather says, you know, you need to weave long ropes. He says, oh, well, why? He says, well, a great many years ago, a great flood came in and washed the people away who hadn't listened to their elders and weaved their own long ropes. Couldn't tie off to the tops of the trees. And this is part of the tsunami legend that has gone on in our oral tradition. But we forget the old knowledge. I, by trade, was a history teacher. And it's just amazing to me to see how we forget these things, how we know this knowledge, but we don't pass it down. So earthquake safety, something I like to go over it. This all starts with you. You want to talk about preparedness? Yes, we are working on it as a region, as governmental actors. We work together to take in what our scientist friends tell us, to try to learn how we can do this, how we can budget it. But it starts with you. DC hot. Drop, cover, and hold on tight. So important to remember. It's not something that we do here a lot. It's not something that we have grown up with in this region, is knowing that this fault is active. And this is one of my favorite books right now. Some of you have probably seen this in many people's presentation, but I will drive it home again. Get to know your disaster self. This is in the book, The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley. It's her thesis in the book is, how are you going to react? How do you act in an incident? I'm sure everyone has been through some sort of incident in their life, whether it's a house fire, your dog running away, something like that. How did you feel? What emotions ran through you? And it's very important to think about this ahead of time, because when you freeze in an incident, it can mean life or death. It can mean not just your life, it can mean other people. And this is something I go over with our incident command staff on campus. Can you handle this? Do you feel too connected to this through some past trauma? And it's important to go over. This is something that police and fire deal with every day. And again, I'll stress it, it starts with you. And it's amazing how she ends the book talking about the trade towers. The one company that did the fire evacuations had the largest safety rate afterwards. But, you know, the security chief wasn't listening to many people, and he died in the end, going back in to save people. So just allow that for people to think, is that some people really take this seriously and some people don't think about it. And there's reasons for that, but I just suggest that each of you as people really work with this. And get creative. You saw that car tire before. That's my car tire, my Subaru. I got my granola bars, my emergency kit, jumper cables, flashlight, gloves, shovel. You know, I have a colleague here who has, well, it's a bomb shelter with a lot of ammo in it. You know, he has his idea of preparedness, but he's put $1,500 into his preparedness kit. You know, so there's what I'm trying to say with that is they're a level. I'm a little more creative. I'm a beer brewer, so I fill up my jugs with water when I'm not using them to brew. They're just sitting there full of water. Another thing I do is all my camping gear. It's all labeled. It's all packed away in a crate. And it's not that hard to do. That way, if you get out of work on a Friday and it's a nice, beautiful Oregon Friday, you can take off. It's right there. It's just another way to organize yourself. And this is in my kitchen. I can't tell what that is, but it's a flashlight. I have a pull switch for my kitchen light, and I just tether the flashlight to it so I can run out the door if I have one. Also, that way, no one can take it to go work on the car or go do something else, and I won't ever have it again. It's just ideas. I like to get you to work in your space to think about what would work for you. So where to start? What do you need? The most common thing that people forget is how many people are on medicines that they would need within a week's time if the supply chain was upset. This is something you should talk about with your doctor. This is something you should talk about with your physician. It's something you should just go look into. Some resources. There's ready.gov and there's reallyready.gov. Reallyready.gov is a critique by the American Federation of Scientists. Worth reading their argument. Amanda Ripley critiques in her book when we all get on a plane, what do they tell you to do? Put on your neighbor's mask before yours. Well, they don't tell you why. If you didn't put your nose on, you would pass out and you wouldn't be able to help them. That's the kind of argument that they have on that website, is telling you why you should do things, not just that you should do them. So I advocate, again, think for yourself on what that would mean. And right now, I'm working on how do we not just do emergency management, how do we not just respond, but how do we recover? Continuity. That is what I'm looking into here. How do we continue on? What is important to each department? What are the critical assets? Where are they stored? How are they backed up? And an organization of this side and 49 acres of this campus, that's a lot. Checking your spare tire. Update your addresses. Update your contact information with your departments or with your family. I have one for my family where we go up. We have a special spot, grassy knoll up the hill. At work, update your numbers. I advocate everyone to go into PSU Alert if you are part of this community and enter your information. We test it once a quarter, sometimes once every other quarter, and sometimes we actually have to use it. Secure your items. Getting back to earthquakes, non-structural hazard mitigation is on you in your home. And I know I go to many conferences and I get giant reams from FEMA about what I should be studying and so forth, and I put them on a bookshelf. Don't put that bookshelf behind your desk. Put it somewhere to the side where it's not going to block an egress. Think about these things. And essential items, and what is your role? What is your role in your home? What is your role in your office? Who are you the leader? Would you be looked to in a time to help other people out? And a 72-hour kit, again, this is what we've been talking about, but it's good to think about for your pet as well. They're going to want to eat. This is where I get to promoting Portland's CERT model. The CERT model is Community Emergency Response Teams, but since CERT in Portland is SWAT team, uses that name, they call it NET here in Portland, Neighborhood Emergency Teams. I work with Williams' crew once in a while to train. I am a trainer. We're looking at how to get a campus program together here. I am a one-man show doing emergency management and continuity, so that can be a bit much some days. But I highly recommend looking into the training. You can look at POEM's website, that's Portland Office of Emergency Management, and you can see the next training dates that are coming up. And the topics in there are disaster awareness, so knowing what disasters are in your area, how to shut off utilities, some disaster medicine, light search and rescue, disaster psychology, trauma intervention, and a final field exercise where you go into a smoke-filled building with Portland Fire and you learn how to, you go through with them and see what they see. It's really helpful. My guiding understanding of emergency management is this. I'm a conflict resolution guy. I'm a consensus guy. If we can all shake hands before something occurs, we'll be able to shake hands afterwards. What that means is let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. How are we going to move through this incident? How are we going to move through the things that we know? And I believe that leads from collaboration to interoperability so we can work together, to sustainability as an organization and a city, and continuity to move on to the next incident, if you will. And that's my presentation. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, don't go away. Come here. Thank you very much, Brian, for your words of wisdom. And I also want to mention that Friday the 13th is his birthday, so all together now, happy birthday. I'm sure he's going to check out a couple of Jason movies on video and watch them. Thank you, Brian.